Why is she pointing a camera at my house again? What boundary does she think she owns this time? I stared from my window as Karen paced along the property line, binder in hand, snapping photos of my home like she was building a case against a criminal. A cold certainty crept over me. This wasn't about a fence or paint color. This was about control, about power, about me living outside her precious HOA and still daring to exist. 3 days later, a lawsuit landed in my mailbox. She had no idea I was about to crush her in court. Comment your city below. I never imagined something as simple as buying a small home in a quiet neighborhood would turn into a battle I'd remember for the rest of my life. My name is Jordan, and after years of renting cramped apartments in noisy parts of the city, I finally found what felt like the perfect place. A peaceful street lined with old oak trees, the kind of street where families walked dogs in the evening and porch lights glowed softly. My home wasn't within any subdivision. It stood on its own property. A modest 2-bedroom house just outside the borders of an HOA-controlled development. That separation, only a short stretch of pavement, would become the spark to everything that followed. To me, the home symbolized freedom. Freedom from noisy neighbors, freedom from landlords, freedom from rules that dictated what color your mailbox should be or how tall your grass could grow. I wanted quiet, I wanted space, and most of all, I wanted a neighborhood where I could breathe without feeling watched. But the longer I lived there, the more I felt a subtle tension surrounding me. Cars slowed down as they passed my house. People walking their dogs crossed the street rather than come near. And at the center of it all was the woman who lived at the entrance of the HOA, Karen, the self-appointed enforcer of property standards and neighborhood image. She always looked at me with the same cold judgment, as if my very presence threatened the balance of her world. At first, it was passive, disapproving glances, whispered comments, complaints about my non-conforming residence, even though I wasn't part of her HOA. But deep down I sensed something darker, a resentment rooted in more than property lines. Something about me living there, owning that home, seemed to offend her in a way she tried to hide behind paperwork. Still, I brushed it off. I focused on my garden, my quiet evenings, my slow mornings. But peace doesn't last long when people decide you don't belong. And as I soon learned, Karen wasn't content to just glare from across the street. She wanted control. And when she couldn't have that, she wanted me gone. It started with a letter taped to my door and not mailed, not delivered. Taped, a crisp sheet of paper with the HOA logo printed boldly at the top. The message claimed that I was in violation of community standards and demanded immediate compliance. I laughed at first, thinking it was a mistake. My home wasn't in the HOA zone. I wasn't under their jurisdiction. I didn't owe them a thing. But the following week, another letter arrived, then another, each more aggressive than the last. Karen had even taken photos of my home from different angles, circling things like improper fence height and non-approved paint color. I knew instantly what this really was. A black man owning a home near her precious gated community was something she simply couldn't tolerate. But hiding her prejudice behind HOA documents made her feel justified. I tried to ignore it. But when she escalated to filing an official complaint with the county, claiming my home disrupted neighborhood aesthetic, I realized ignoring her wouldn't make her stop. One morning, while watering my plants, I caught her standing at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, watching me like she was inspecting a crime scene. She held her phone up, snapping pictures as if gathering evidence. I approached her to tell her to leave my property. Still, she turned away with a smirk, muttering something I couldn't fully hear, but understood well enough. Not supposed to be here anyway. The next day, a lawsuit appeared in my mailbox. Karen and the HOA were suing me for non-compliance with neighborhood standards, claiming that although my house was technically outside the HOA zone, it still directly affected their environment. It was absurd. But the dangerous part wasn't the lawsuit itself, it was the confidence behind it. Karen genuinely believed she could force me to obey rules that didn't apply to me. Worse, she thought the court would side with. Her rage simmered beneath my calm exterior, fueled by years of similar experiences, always being watched, questioned, doubted. But this time, something inside me hardened. I wouldn't let this woman intimidate me. I wouldn't let her rewrite boundaries simply because she refused to respect mine. I gathered every document I had. Property maps proving my home sat outside. Their jurisdiction, county records, my deed, everything. I met with an attorney who immediately saw what was happening. "They don't have a case," he said, "but they're hoping you'll panic." Instead, I prepared. The court date arrived, faster than expected. Karen strutted into the courtroom, wearing a blazer 3 sizes too stiff, carrying a binder so thick it looked like she had printed every thought she ever had about me. Behind her, the HOA's board members entered like backup dancers, nodding, sternly as if they represented justice itself. I sat quietly, calm but wired with tension. The judge entered. The case began, and in that moment, the truth behind Karen's obsession would unravel faster than she ever imagined. Karen stood confidently before the judge, flipping through her binder filled with accusations, photos, and paragraphs of HOA rules that had nothing to do with my home. She spoke as if she were defending the entire neighborhood from an invading force. The judge listened patiently at first, but as she kept rambling, his expression tightened. Finally, he turned to me. My attorney handed him the property map, in one showing the bold, unmistakable boundary line. My home sat clearly outside their HOA perimeter, exempt from every rule Karen had cited. The judge examined the document for no more than 10 seconds before his eyebrows shot upward. Then came the moment everything cracked open. Karen insisted the map was old and incorrect. My attorney slid forward the updated version from the county website, dated 3 months earlier. She doubled down, claiming the map was tampered with. The judge asked her if the HOA had any jurisdictional documents proving her claim. She froze. Her board members avoided eye contact. The silence was enough. The judge leaned forward, voice firm. He explained that not only did the HOA have zero authority over my property, but filing a lawsuit without jurisdiction was a misuse of the legal system. He dismissed the case instantly. Then, in a stunning twist, he slapped Karen and the HOA with a fine for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Payable. To me, Karen's face drained of color. Her confidence evaporated. Her binder trembled in her hands. The courtroom whispered in shock. 3 minutes. That's all it took for her entire crusade to collapse. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Leaving. The courtroom that day, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. One I hadn't realized had grown so heavy. Karen stood outside, shaken, still clutching her binder like a shield. The HOA members whispered among themselves, their posture no longer proud but embarrassed. I walked past them without a word. I didn't need to say anything. The truth had spoken for me. The victory was more than legal. It was personal. It was a reminder of how often racism disguises itself behind policy, regulations, and paperwork. How people like Karen wrap their prejudice in rules to discriminate look official. How quickly they weaponize authority, real or imagined, to target someone they believe is out of place. But something changed after that day. Neighbors who once avoided me now nodded respectfully. Some apologized privately, admitting they had. Silently watched the harassment unfold. Others still kept their distance, but their eyes were different, less bold, less entitled. The fine the HOA paid was enough to fix up parts of my home and start a new garden bed in the front yard. A quiet, symbol of growth after conflict. I spent more time outdoors, unbothered, reclaiming the peace I'd moved there for. But the more profound impact wasn't in the money or the victory. It was in knowing that standing up for myself mattered. Those boundaries need defending, especially when people believe they're entitled to cross them. My story isn't unique. All over the country, countless people face similar battles, small at first, then escalating when entitlement meets prejudice. The question isn't whether discrimination exists, it's whether we confront it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories and share to raise awareness. Take care.